Hello everyone and welcome back to Click Theory 2.0. Now in the last video we took a deep dive into beat displacement and metric modulation on the drum set in a duple subdivision. And of course we can't forget about our triple subdivision, so we can apply the same exercises to our ternary metronome settings. So let's look at beat displacement first. Remember that the challenge of these exercises depends on the musical material that you bring into them. So when starting out, simpler is always better. Now in a triplet subdivision, we can use jazz swing time as a basis for beat displacement. Now I'm going to demonstrate a more advanced example, but feel free to simplify any exercise you see in the entire Click Theory system if you need to get more comfortable at first. So let's take a look at a groove that Vernel Fournier might have played with the Ahmad Jamal Trio and displace it using our ternary basic metronome setting number 2, which is on the swung 8th note. Now like in the last video, we can alternate between playing 4 bars in our initial pulse and then 4 measures with our pulse displaced. So I'll demonstrate that now. Alright, so moving on to implied modulation, like in the last video we can use the advanced ternary metronome settings to imply a new tempo. Now using implied modulation in a jazz context can be a very powerful musical tool, and drummers like Tony Williams, Jeff Tain Watts, and more recently Ari Honig have been able to successfully apply this concept musically into a jazz setting. Alright, so let's begin by modulating using the first advanced metronome setting. Now like before, it's helpful to know what rhythm the metronome is creating against our initial pulse. And in this case, it's half-note triplets. Now because we are in triplets, the metronome will reset back to the downbeat at the beginning of each measure. But since we are implying 4/4 time with 3 beats in each measure with the advanced metronome setting, it will create this over the bar line effect. So as before, I'll play 4 measures of jazz swing time in our initial tempo, and then I'll play 4 measures in the modulated tempo. Again, you can follow along with all of these exercises notated in the handout, which you can find in the description below. So I'll demonstrate that now. So in swing, a natural phenomenon that occurs when the tempo starts to get faster is the swung 8th note will start to straighten out. And we can actually modulate now using some of our duple metronome settings. In this case, I'll demonstrate a dotted quarter note. Now if we try to use a dotted quarter note at a slower tempo in a triplet subdivision, you'll find that the metronome, or where it should fall in the measure, is not evenly spaced. Therefore our metronome can't do that setting. But if we think in more evened out 8th notes, then a lot of the duple metronome settings can apply in this particular musical situation. Like in the last video, this cycle of a dotted quarter note will reset every 3 measures. So I'm going to play 3 measures in our initial pulse, and then it will wind up being 2 measures in our modulated pulse that will allow us to land back on beat 1. So I'll demonstrate alternating between our initial pulse and a dotted quarter note implied modulation. Like in the last video, another way to practice these modulation exercises is giving the metronome a more traditional role and having it on all 4 quarter notes with a different sound on beat 1. Now sometimes when I practice swing, I like to put the metronome on beats 2 and 4 to make it swing a little more, but the choice is yours. So I'll demonstrate the exercises that we've covered using the metronome in a more traditional setting. All right, so I hope that gives you a good foundation along with the last video to methodically practice metric modulation and expand your rhythmic capabilities. Now remember, you can come up with your own grooves and variations on these exercises and of course have fun with them. Now the next video will be our last and we'll talk about the final step on our journey, which is improvising using the click theory system. So I'll see you then.